My name's Christine Sliwa with Share Beauty and Joy. I'm a spiritual counselor. According to the American Psychological Association, there's about 250,000 shortage, a need for professionals in the helping professions to get people organized in their thoughts. So with the needs of individuals in the United States, where there's about 330 million people in the US, there's a need of about another 250,000 therapists just to take care of the needs that are already present. Not even all those who are coming forward too, as the population grows. And so people have found themselves after COVID unwilling to accept situations that don't work for them anymore, whether it be work situations. People now have gotten used to remote work, whether it be anxiety, how they feel about something, that if it gives them trepidation or nervous feelings, they're unwilling now to say, you know what, I'm gonna just push through this is something that I have to do. People now come to mental health professionals like myself for help with things like sleep, productivity, work direction or life direction, relationship direction with love, or maybe parenting, parent-child relationship, whether it be you taking care of your adult parents or you taking care of your children. People are not willing to deal with grief anymore like they used to. That whole step system of turning it, and you have this and then you have that and you have this, and people are not willing to do that anymore. People are saying, either this situation or this person really meant a lot to me and now they're gone. And I want help to work through that. I want to figure out what's on the other end of that. So my wish is that the work that I do continues to help this field grow. It's been so amazingly helpful for me, and that's why I got into it. Right before COVID hit, I went to University of Massachusetts and I advanced my degree in psychology because it's interesting to me that so much of what is taught, and I went to public school most of my life as a young child and a little bit of Catholic schooling too, but the focus is always on the outside, what the rest of all these situations are doing for you is never really discussed, like how your brain works, how you take in new information, how you have emotions. What does that mean? When kids are a little bit younger and they have tantrums or they act out, we know a lot more now because of the clinical research that's being done, since the 70s and 80s in attachment theory, which is huge, and trauma education. At first there was a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of things that have just kind of become accepted as that's the way certain either cultures or socioeconomic groups raise their children. And really what it boils down to is that every child very early on has this deep sense, a deep need of being lovable. They just know that whatever their needs are, the world's going to meet them for them. And they know that if they don't get those needs met, they're not going to grow up the right way to be their best selves as they get older. So now that we know that, we have so much research to support that. We, people like me, mental health professionals who find that the spiritual world is just as important as the mental world, as the physical body, we want to move away from being critiqued on same types of things as you get early on in school. How much homework you complete, how many answers you get right, how fast you can get from one class to another, that kind of stuff. It's like a outside marginal influence on who you are as a person. We want to know, people like me, mental health professionals who also believe in the spiritual, is that what if that struggle from school had crossed over to work and it was just a continuation of these same patterns, same beliefs that really, this is a common phrase, aren't serving you. And so what that means is that if you've just become accustomed to, to this habitual way of thinking and behaving, and because you needed money, you went and did this thing at this job, or asked for help from a certain type of person who was around you, and maybe you made some bad decisions later on, maybe you got in trouble for certain things, or maybe you happen to make some decisions that kind of kept you just kind of like at a median level, where you weren't really happy, but you weren't really doing bad, so you're just kind of just skating through. I want to know, like, what if you're the kind of person who still just can't sit still, who can't keep your mouth shut, who doesn't just want to take orders from these invisible people somewhere, like further up the chain. Oh, well, my manager told us to tell you, somebody, some middleman relaying, the interests of corporations to us as human individuals with no sanctification for our right to be happy. It's like, it's like, this is so important right now. Everybody that's coming forward as union interested, they kind of use different terms to describe people's sexuality if they are, kind of interested in something, that's a little bit offbeat. Well, that same idea is applying to work. The traditional way that people have thought of work for a long time has been even only possible because of unions, because of people actually fighting for and dying, being killed by police and by corporations, hitmans and henchmen way back in the early 1900s. That's the only reason we got to this 40-hour work week. We get a certain amount, a minimum wage of pay per hour, and the expectation, these quotas, that they have on people now. I've heard some stories, and obviously every personality is different, and there's no need to even exaggerate how bad working conditions are getting to be for people in the US, just as bad as they are for people in third world countries, which shouldn't even exist anyway either. I strongly believe that if a corporation has enough money to take everything that they have overseas, and they're still not going to give those people enough to adequately live on, then they are not doing business in a way that's sustainable to the long-term future of the world. And I don't agree with it. So I think that it's really important in my personal experience is that once you finally get to that place, where you're ready to delve within, for me, that kind of like what makes me tick kind of, really came through when I was so depressed, probably about 15 years ago or so now, that I was suicidal, and the only thoughts, it may sound crazy, but the only thoughts that made me feel better were thoughts like little vivid fantasies that I would have about hurting people who hurt me, because I felt so powerless in my everyday life. I felt that everything was being done to me, and I had absolutely no idea how I was involved in relationship with other individuals in my life, and personal relationships and intimate relationships and work relationships and relationships just with the community at large. I had no idea what my role was and what their role was, or ideally what my role in a way that was most comfortable for me would be, with still respect for them, would be, so that we could kind of like, instead of hammering out our differences, we could kind of find like a little bit of a weaving of the middle ground, our differences kind of coming together, some staying separate, some being compromised on, more like the tides of the ocean kind of flowing over the sand and just gently moving the sand back and forth, not like a waterfall with the whole rushing tide, just hitting and slamming into the stones at once and maybe breaking off a few pieces at a time. That's a type of emotional attunement that I had at that time, is that once I finally had an emotion, it was like every other time in my whole life that an emotion had happened came with it, and I had absolutely just a loss for life. There was only a few things that made me happy, there's only a few things that I felt connected to, and one of them was my family, and I'm extremely grateful for that. So I know that there's a lot of people out there who don't have that, who don't have somebody close to them who they can talk to, who they can really work things out with, who they can just be totally vulnerable and totally honest with, and start to get in touch with what it is that really makes them tick. And that's why I decided to become a spiritual counselor, because there are many people who have helped me in many different ways with energy work, psychic work, especially with getting into parts work, which now the psychological community calls the way that we would look at those parts of ourselves where when we weren't taken care of for one reason or another, that if it was something outside of you that scared you or that hurt you, or if it was something that you did that kind of cut yourself off from experiences that you had because they were just too big for you to process on your own. So we like to look at that now, that all those experiences can be for good. And instead of just staying completely separate from them, kind of just bringing them in, developing a relationship with all the different parts of yourself. A lot of times when people say, well, like part of me wants to do this or part of me wants to do that, and you don't really understand where that divide comes from. Sometimes it's logical, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you really have no idea where it comes from. That's what I like to help people get in touch with now. That has really helped me a lot. And so it took me, yes, a while to get to that place where I even wanted to figure out anything about myself. And I had to also get to a really low point in my life. Once I did, though, it became easier and easier to follow through with these things that came forth from within myself as a direction. So that's what I also like to get people in touch with their own intuition, the thoughts that are already bubbling out creatively from them. We don't necessarily have to look into, as if you would Google things and a whole list, sheets of information would come up, what would be right for somebody in different situations. We can just kind of look and feel inside, and that's a great start, because oftentimes when we go looking for something outside of ourselves, what we find is something that we say no to. And sometimes when we give a no too much attention, just no matter which way you slice it, you can be pulling more of that into your life. So we want to get focused on how to use our thoughts to create things that we would love to join up with, that we love to be a part of. Those are the kind of things we want to focus on. And if we don't do this authentically, if we can't be honest with ourselves about how we feel and understand what really makes us tick, then it makes it a lot more difficult. You might think that you want something because maybe there's an idea from way back, or maybe there's an idea from society at large. And now you have to figure out if that's actually the idea that works for you, that really resonates with you and who you are and who you want to become, So my biggest aspirations as a counselor are to help people figure out 4 main things. I think that it's really important for people to figure out how trauma affected them, how it shaped their outlook on life, from how people treat them to parenting and childhood, old age and caretaking, all of these things that have happened to you. Did you have enough support at that time that you didn't get lost in a reaction? Or did you not feel comfortable? Did you not feel safe? And now we have to help you to figure out, oh, is that why you always seem to, overreact when something particular happens? Is that why it seems like you have a temper? What are these different types of things? Is that why you seem quiet? You don't maybe know what to say under certain conditions. B, it's extremely important to me to help people to figure out how losing people in their life affects them, from the grief of actually physically losing people that you're close to, people actually dying, to just that sensation of losing either relationships that were supportive, that were useful for you, that you really joined up with that person creatively really well. Having those leave your life too is very upsetting. And so to help people to process grief and to not do it in the different types of stages that I have heard often parroted, sorry, apologies to the creator. But I found that if you can tap into a spiritual sense of things, then it's much easier to go forward. You don't feel as though these people are lost, that these people are beyond you, that these people will go to one place or another, based on theology. You have a deep inner sense of knowing. It's a completely different feeling. And the reason why this has become so much more important to me in the last few years is because I lost my youngest brother in a car accident a few years ago. He was driving to his friend's house. It was late at night. He slipped on some ice and he probably died immediately. So it was more heartbreaking than my little body could even allow myself to experience. I was in a fog for a really long time. It was months. I mean, you can't put an exact number on the types of things for how long that they lasted, but it was a while that it even took me to kind of come out into the knowingness that I was experiencing such a detachment from life. It was as if anything that I had to do, I was just trying so hard to stay present. And maybe I was achieving about a 4% present rate throughout the day. It was such a small amount of me that could even stand to be here with him gone. And then during that whole next year, my grandmother, who I was also very close to, had gotten cancer. She found out after Connor died. And she was struggling with trying to stay here and go through the treatments when she had a really very painful, terrible stomach cancer and in an advanced state. And she eventually passed about a year after Connor did. And even though we got time to be with her and to say goodbye and to really love her, before she passed, it's still a devastating loss. Both of them, in their own ways, offered me a lot. A lot. They offered me just huge threads of independence and peace and support and comfort. They helped me through many difficult times. And then, very quickly after that, a cousin who I used to be very close to, he also passed. And I had always felt that we would be close again. And so to have also a different type of loss there, where I had already lost that relationship for a few years and it never returned back to me, when I deeply valued his friendship, the camaraderie that we had, that feeling of just having fun despite our differences and the things that we were going through, to have that support, that foundation, it really made me evaluate my life completely differently. And every time I got to a new awareness about myself, I was able to make a new decision about how I wanted to proceed forward. And one of those things that's also extremely important to me is helping other people to find the work that's right for them. So now that I know without a doubt, it is so strong in my heart that this is the right type of work for me, no matter how difficult it gets, with learning how to have my own business, investigating the tax laws, what you're supposed to do legally, how do you do things like this, like making a video, how do you get your information and your story out there to see if it resonates with other people and to see if they would like to come to you for services, for help, and for healing, for direction, motivation, and support. These types of things have been really the most learning I've done in a very long time. It's completely new. I wasn't that great with technology, and now I'm getting better. I think that a lot of times when people are pushed into a situation where they have to do work that's not really meaningful, that their whole heart is not in it, that can contribute to a sense of unworthiness, of despair. A lot of people oftentimes get not exactly suicidal, but very near suicidal, with that feeling of just not really wanting to partake in the universe, what's happening around them. I think that there is a place for everybody to spread and share their creative instincts with the world in a way where they can be financially totally taken care of, you know, and that they can help other people. So sometimes the things that you do you think may not be a direct help, like giving somebody a coffee, they need one in the morning, you know, but sometimes somebody who is an incredible artist, the time that it took them, days, weeks, months, to come up with the inspiration that put them right into that point where they were able to create a masterpiece that when other people look on it, they feel whatever it is that the artist intended for them to feel: peace, confusion, chaos, a lightness, a heaviness, whatever it is that really helps that person in that moment is what we all, I believe, are doing all of the time to varying degrees. So we feel better when we feel like we're being recognized for who we authentically are. We feel better as human beings when we feel that love, that sensation being returned to us, when we're giving it out and we're getting it back, when we're sharing in it, when we're not just taking love selfishly for ourselves and we're not just giving it away all the time like a martyr, you know? There has to be a balance to things. And so my other third passion is to help people to find work that's right for them. And if that's something as simple as they need a confidence boost, if they need some clarity, if they need to figure out what relationships they have in their life that are serving them, that the whole idea of networking, are these people that you genuinely like and care about, that you want to get closer to and know? Or are these just people that you think that you should get closer to and know? I've been in those situations before where I tried to develop relationships with people who I didn't genuinely click with, and it didn't feel good and they didn't work out. And so I'd like to spare people the expense of time with doing things like that based on my experience and my therapeutic outpouring of love and support. And the fourth situation that really moves me, fundamental to all of the other beliefs that I have, is helping people to figure out and to get through, to be guided out of addictions. So whether somebody's addicted to smoking cigarettes, if they're addicted to alcohol, if they're addicted to substances, if they're addicted to overeating, whatever it is that they are doing that they would like to stop, but they just can't quite figure out how, I'm also here to help with that too. So I offer supplementary therapies in all four of these areas because I have experience with them, because it means a lot to me. All of the people that have helped me, that have come forward, I have read from philosophers. Immanuel Kant was one of my favorite, to Course in Miracles. That book came into my life at a time when I was really spiritually open, and I felt that however this work was channeled, I felt it opened up a whole new world of possibilities for me. It made me feel like absolutely anything here on earth was possible. I love the writings of Sister Faustina, her diary. There are some religious works that just move me. They help me feel really close to God. And there are also some poetic works. There's ancient Sufi poet, Hafiz or Hafez, his name is pronounced differently, I think, depending on the dialect. His poems, how he calls God beloved and how he calls us on God's behalf beloved, it would just make my heart sing. It would make me feel so tender inside. It would help me to just kind of melt it down a lot of the negative ideas I had about the world and how the world works. You know, there was so much love and consideration that I've found out there. And I want to also give thanks to the different types of therapies that have helped me. Talk therapy was really useful at the beginning when I was just getting used to just opening up about how I felt. One of the first things that I had to learn how to admit was that I was angry, which seems like it's really not that big of a deal. But for me, I was so embarrassed and ashamed that I was even feeling angry that I hid it so far away from myself. It was like on an outer rung of a ladder that was like way out to sea, you know? I was like a big boat over here and the ladder was down there. It was so far away from me that it took me a really long time to get in touch with that. But once I started to, it became more and more okay for me to be angry. And then eventually it wasn't so overwhelming anymore. It felt more like, okay, now I'm starting to see these types of things make me feel this way. And what can I do about them? Is there something that I should have done about them earlier? Is there a different decision that I should have made? Or is there something that I never could have guessed? And now I have to make a decision about this. A lot of things where I felt like either I was just a passerby kind of in my own life, or almost even like a victim. I just didn't ever see an out where I could have made a decision. I could have done something differently. And to learn how to get in touch with my emotions and slow down my thinking helped me to get to that place where I realized, oh, right there is a decision. I love being able to do that with people, to help people to see that there are ways to take back control of your life. Even if you didn't know that you ever had it, there are ways to do that. And so the next step for me was EMDR work. I worked with a woman who helped me. The first session that I went to helped me so much. The first session, when I went home that afternoon and that night, I was up all night and I was taking my hair and I was everywhere. I was parting it. I was putting an ice pack because my head felt like it was on fire. And when I had called her the next day to ask what was going on, I was almost like a little nervous, kind of scared, but unsure. It didn't hurt. It was just so hot, She said that that's actually because with the bilateral stimulation that I experience in EMDR, while bringing up a traumatic feeling, the experience, and then the feeling, not even talking too much about it, the brain was doing the work of sending new transmissions forward, creating new pathways so that I didn't get stuck in those same old lines of thinking when certain people would call them triggers or experiences, common things that would relate back to those old experiences that had hurt me, that I felt powerless in. Those were all coming forward. And so I was really open to it. And as she was processing all of this little firing back and forth, because your brain is essentially an electrical circuit, I could feel as heat. It was absolutely amazing. And then also, I was able to move back and outside to be more objective. It was almost like things that had been happening to me before that point, I was really so fully immersed in, I just couldn't step back from. EMDR opened it up so that I kind of started to feel like I might have an ability to make a decision here. And I stopped pretty quickly overreacting as much as I had been before in certain circumstances, depending on what we worked on. So that feeling of just like, being so supported by the universe was incredible. And then when I worked on the parts therapy labeled internal family systems, I would sit. So if next person I worked with also, I would sit. And when I had a strong feeling, sometimes we would just have that feeling. It was amazing. I had never really been in a situation before where I felt okay enough to ever share what I was feeling with somebody else in words. So starting to do it was useful in the prior years, and then actually feeling the feeling in front of somebody else now without having to use any words opened up a whole new avenue of healing to me. It was like I didn't always have to have a story behind everything. I could just be with these parts of myself, that were coming up for healing. Then, as I went forward in my going back to school career, I felt that I was definitely going to go, I was going to get a master's degree. I was going to become a licensed therapist. I was going to be the standard type of person, but who did complementary therapy as well. So it's extremely difficult to get a master's degree. You have to have quite a bit of money. You have to have quite a bit of dedication to book learning and to also learning things that you may not even need. And so as these regulations have changed it has been no wonder that the statistic that I started this with, that we are so behind in having the actual number of therapists available based on the need of people who are looking for therapists. It's extremely difficult now. You have to be technically, usually, a wealthy person. Oftentimes, a person who doesn't come from trauma. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but what I'm saying is that even the way that the world has been looking at the helpers who get to help the disadvantaged, right? The traumatic feelings that are coming up for individuals or anything normal. Generalized anxiety, general type of anxiety, anxiety maybe with no name or no seeming cause. Those types of feelings, I realized that I was getting the most help from these complementary therapies. So I invested in different courses. I invested in learning more about shamanism. There was a Peruvian shaman from, uh, he was so kind and gentle. He was like um, a muse for my spiritual affect. He came through and he guided us in these different types of rituals and practices that were his heritage. And I could see the strength of, especially, the frequency of light. So, what he called, the seven sisters, the rainbow of light, colors around the world that were bringing different frequencies to the planet. So, I never stopped believing in the different types of spiritual principles I had. And now I had a ecological perspective also on indigenous cultures and how they view our interaction with the world, with spirit, as a very natural give and take. So not just with people and not just with, if you want to call it God or the universe, source energy, whatever, not just with this thing that created us, but also that there's all these other beings out there with consciousness too. And so I could feel that. There were times where I would be sitting outside in nature and it just helped to calm me. I had watched a documentary on grounding. It was like I think it was like an hour and a half. And there was this guy who talked about how he was having such terrible physical pain. Somehow he found out about this idea that if you would lay with a bare body, your whole body, on the earth, and when he did it also, which was even more incredible, was it was snowing a lot where he lived. And so he said that he had to, like, dig out this whole area, laid himself down. He said he didn't feel that terribleness of the cold because he was so in tune with the earth. And the earth's frequency also is so much lower. It's like 8 hertz than we're used to. So everything operates on a much higher scale, much higher frequency. Like that noise in the background. That's probably like a little scooter or something. Everything operates at such high frequencies that when we lower ourselves back down, we can hear ourselves. We can hear our inner world. We can hear our turmoil if it's there. We can feel our turmoil if there's tension, if there's pain, if there's a soreness, if there's a heat feeling, if there's a cold feeling. And the body will communicate with us in this way. So that opened my eyes in a whole different way. It's the power of what paying attention to your body really does for you. It's amazing. So then I got into Reiki, so different types of energy work. And I'm now certified, I'm fully attuned. And I found that this type of work, you go within and you are centering yourself within. It's almost as if you can anchor your spirit right within you, but that also, it's kind of tethered. And so the spirit of the fullness of whatever healing needs to come forward for another person can just be directed through you. And it's an amazing feeling. And to see the result of it, especially as clearly as in my young nephew, he's about 3.5 almost now. And he has a very rare disorder. And so oftentimes he will have trouble with digestive issues, he'll have trouble with eating, he'll have trouble with attention, he'll have trouble with energy. So he goes back and forth. Some days he's doing really good, and some days he needs a lot of help. And so when I would practice Reiki on him, we would find that his overall well-being was at a higher degree later on that day, or that night he slept better, or that next morning he used the bathroom more clearly, more easily. His body was able to process and eliminate toxins more easily. I couldn't believe it. There is also now a lot of clinical research that's being done on how Reiki works and why Reiki works. It's come from a really long line, a long line of masters overseas. And so in the Eastern world, just like in South America, there's different ways of approaching healing. And so these are all normal things. These are all a part of therapy. Talking is normal. Talking to the community, being immersed in a group of people who care about you and you really care about, people that you're authentic with. Community is a huge part of why I was able to first get sober myself, second, find out more about how trauma had affected me, third, get healing, and then fourth, feel like carrying this healing message forward in the world. Without community, without a strong foundation, my internal sense of wanting to do this, no matter what, no matter the cost, no matter how difficult it is, it wouldn't be able to come forward. So there's so many people now who have helped me to financially support me. There's so many people who have really just helped to feather my nest almost, so that the information experiences that I have, I can go out and share with the world, and I can help other people to heal too. I never thought that I would quit smoking. I have been sober now for almost 20 years, and I'm almost 40 years old. And I thought that, smoking was just one of those things. I had tried to quit plenty of times, never made it. I was butting heads. I was just seeing my hands come together, butting heads with smoking. There was a part of me that didn't want any part of it, didn't even like it. And then there was a part of me that loved it so much that I would chain smoke one right after another, half a pack, sometimes even a pack, depending on what I was doing. If I was driving or talking to somebody, it was so painful to be putting my body into that state where it couldn't get any oxygen. It didn't feel good. It didn't function great. And then finally the time came where once I was ready to quit smoking, I had a lot of assistance from this book, from a hypnotherapist that I know really well, Alan Carr, The Easy Way to Quit Smoking. And so I would just run up and down the stairs if I was at school and I really wanted a cigarette, but I was trying not to have one. I would, if I couldn't run up and down the stairs, I would go try to some discreet place and just do a bunch of push-ups until I couldn't breathe again, to remind myself why I'm quitting, because I can't even breathe. I couldn't even do 10 push-ups without wheezing. I was waking up in the morning, barely able to talk, such a constriction. At night, sometimes I could hear myself wheezing. It'd be like a really faint, almost like a snake hissing kind of in the background, but it was me. I was wheezing like a little dog toy. I couldn't stand it, and I also did not want to die of lung cancer. I wanted to be around. I wanted to live. So once I was finally ready, hypnotherapy really helped me. It helped to just make that transformation possible. It cemented it in, and then no matter what feeling I was having or thought that I was having about smoking cigarettes, I was not smoking a cigarette. And then finally it just stuck, and there was tons of emotion. All this bubbling up of turmoil kept coming out of me when I first started quitting smoking. In those first 6 months or something, it was like little volcanoes all the time, were just erupting around me, within me, everything. And I'm really grateful too to the people who supported me during that time. It made me feel like it was worth it to quit smoking, that I was being cared for enough, and that I was caring for myself also too, even though it was new and it was really difficult. But I was caring for myself enough to never go back to smoking. And curiously enough, I haven't. I haven't gone back to smoking in like 10 years now, maybe even longer or so. So The reason why I say all this is because it's like, I know how hard it is to be stuck on one side of the fence thinking that you can just never cross it. It's too big, it's too far, it's too wide. There is no getting to the other side of the river, you know? And now I feel like because I've gotten to the other side of the river, these are the things specifically that I want to help people with. And I want you to totally, completely feel free to check out my website. It's sharebeautyandjoy.com. The reason why I named it that is because that's what I feel like when I'm doing that with you, then you're able to go out and do that in your world and affect the people who are near and dear to you. And then they're able to take that even further and to go out and to share the beauty of their soul and the joy of the experience of being comforted and supported, feeling safe. You know, it's like a sexy walk kind of feeling when you feel like you got this on lock. It feels so good. Nothing can stand in your way. That's what I want to give to you. And that's what I want you to give to the other people who are close to you. That's what I want people to see in you. You know, I want people to look at you and to say, oh my God, what happened to her? What happened to him? He was having so much trouble with this and this and that. And she was having so much trouble deciding on this or that. Now look at them. I wonder what happened to them. I want people to know that they can harness the power of their mind creatively. I want people to know just how strong a force is within them and just how to direct that force, how to get in touch with it. You know, it's amazing the things that I've experienced from being willing and being able to be present with myself and to share that with other people. These opportunities that just keep coming. And now, as I finish off this video, like I told you, I'll just put the link to the website below, but let me know if there's any questions that you have. If it's about my own personal experience, or if it's about hypnotherapy, or if it's a spiritually based question. If you're kind of curious about something, you know, let me know. Shoot me an email, send me a text message, put a comment below. Okay? And so let's remember that we're all in this together. I'm here for you.